Across the United States, there is an epidemic. A highly addictive, family destroying, life ruining epidemic affecting everyday people and leaving many on the brink of bankruptcy. Now, that description doesn't really narrow it down to a specific epidemic, now does it? Well, there's something very different about the one I'm speaking about. Something that you really couldn't ignore even if you tried. Because the difference between this epidemic and many others is that this one is fully legal and it's advertised relentlessly. April 11th, 2007, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. NBA fans pile into the Verizon Center to watch the Washington Wizards take on the Miami Heat. Both teams are ready to go to war, as the winner of this game would walk away with the number 4 seed in the East, meaning they would get home court advantage at the start of the upcoming NBA playoffs that were just a few days away. The Wizards went in being the underdogs, and with the mentality, they managed to hold a lead for most of the game until the fourth quarter. It's not uncommon for teams to blow a lead in any sort. Sometimes your opponents just get on a roll. That's the name of the game. But this fourth quarter felt different. Foul after foul after foul after free throw after free throw after free throw after free throw. Within the last 4 minutes of the game, Washington had 9 fouls called against them, which ultimately allowed Miami to walk away with the victory and the 4th seed in the East. To many, it felt like the game had been rigged. But it's sports. It's all in the name of competition. There's no way that it could have been rigged. Well, those Washington fans who felt that it had been rigged, they ended up being justified in their suspicions. Later on that year, the very same ref who called those 9 fouls against Washington, Tim Donaghy, would resign from the NBA after an NBA investigation into his off-court activities and ties to the Gambino crime family. Tim would later admit that he did everything in his power to have Miami win that game because he had put illegal sports bets on them. At the time, sports betting was very illegal in the United States, with a handful of exceptions. People could bet in Las Vegas, no shock there, and the states of Oregon, Delaware, and Montana had limited forms of betting available to the masses. But this isn't to say that betting wasn't occurring. Illegal sports betting was estimated to be a $150 billion a year industry in the U.S., making crime families like the Gambinos very wealthy, and insiders like Tim wealthy too. Even when the sports betting market was still illegal, corruption at the highest level still occurred. Now we fast forward to today, and sports betting has been widely legalized, and problems with its legal form of betting is beginning to show. Within the past year, there have already been multiple sports betting controversies across multiple different sports, and all this has occurred in the short time span of sports betting's legality. So that begs the question of how did we get here? Well, we have to start in 1992 in the passing of a bill called the PASPA, Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. PASPA itself did not make sports betting itself a federal crime, but rather it implemented heavy restrictions on a state level. It restricted states from authorizing, licensing, regulating, and promoting any form of professional or amateur sports gambling as a means to protect their integrity. While it wasn't an outright ban, PASPA essentially froze the state's abilities to implement any form of regulated sports betting, with the grandfathered in exceptions of Nevada, Montana, Oregon, and Delaware. But there was also a special case for New Jersey. PASPA gave New Jersey a 1-year window to legalize sports betting in the Atlantic City casinos, something that New Jersey didn't act on and would end up being a problem later on. The PASPA ban on sports betting would hold power for a few decades, but beneath the ban, the illegal sports betting industry quietly grew to be worth over $150 billion. Professional sports leagues publicly supported the bans on sports betting, but quietly benefited from betting, which increased viewership and profiting from offshore gambling markets. the Tim Donaghy case would bring sports betting back into the public eye, and that $150 billion underground betting network was something the government really had no answer for. Within New Jersey particularly, the lack of legal sports betting had been a tentative political issue since the failure to adopt it in the year following the passing of PASPA. The Atlantic City casinos were missing out on a lot of profit, and therefore the state of New Jersey was missing out on a lot of taxes from the sports betting industry. So they did the only rational thing. They sued. In 2018, the Supreme Court would rule on Murphy versus NCAA. New Jersey argued that PASPA couldn't stop the state from repealing their own betting prohibitions versus authorizing new ones. Ultimately, this argument won the favor of the Supreme Court, who struck down PASPA, deeming that Congress couldn't dictate what a state legislator can and can't do. So the legal control of sports betting returned to the hands of states. Within a few years, 39 U.S. states had authorized legal sports betting, and of those 39, 32 have authorized a new form of gambling, the mobile app. This new form of sports betting has proven to be a very differentiating factor in betting's seemingly omnipresent rise. Following the repeal of PASPA, casinos rushed to make betting accessible to as many people as they could, whereas before, in order to place a bet, one needed to be physically present at a casino or with a sports bookie. The invention and adaptation of betting on a mobile app eliminated that gatekeeping aspect. Major casinos rushed to partner with popular sports bookies, platforms, and I'm sure you've seen ads for them. DraftKings, BetMGM, FanDuel, Bet365, the list goes on and on. Mobile bets had become synonymous with sports betting. It's actually estimated that 80% of all sports bets are made through mobile platforms. Success of this new accessibility had converted that $150 billion underground market into $150 billion of legal bets placed in 2024 alone, making the sports betting industry $13 billion in revenue that year. Remember how professional sports organizations claim to have been, anti-gambling? Yeah, that shifted pretty quickly. If you've watched any sort of sports broadcast since 2018, you may have noticed some significant changes. Firstly, in advertising. The overruling of PASPA did more than just legalize the practice of sports betting, it also legalized the advertising of sports betting. In 2021, the betting industry spent over $800 million on advertising on TV slots. Though that number has fallen to just over $600 million, 2024 reported 1,500,000 advertisement slots on television broadcast. But advertising isn't just done via TV in our modern era. These ads can be seen all over YouTube, sports websites, and even they escape the digital world, being seen on billboards and mobile ad trucks if you're unlucky enough to live in a major city. Another aspect of sports broadcasts that have changed were the addition of live Vegas odds throughout the broadcast. In the UFC, for example, odds are presented at the beginning of each fight with the fighter's stats, and then they're updated in real time as the fight continues. That used to not be like that. The bottom line is that professional sports organizations, they love sports betting. The NBA, for example, directly made over $160 million in 2024 from sports betting partnerships alone. This doesn't factor in the increased engagement factor that sports betting generates for the organization. Nielsen Sports estimated in 2018 that gambling would increase the NBA's revenue by almost $600 million through this form of engagement. Keep in mind, this is just one league. The NFL, NHL, MLB, UFC, and every other sports league are all making astronomical amounts of money from these platforms, both directly and indirectly as well. And don't worry, Uncle Sam is also enjoying the revenue from sports betting. In 2023, it's estimated that the nationwide tax yield on sports betting was $2.3 billion. So it sounds like everyone's winning. The betting companies, the sports leagues, the government. Wow, golly, legalizing betting has been a total success. Well, remember the old saying, the house always wins. When it comes to gambling, someone always loses. These platforms make damn sure to tell you all the success of people winning massive sums of money through a 1 in a million parlay. But what is often left out are the effects gambling has on the everyday person. The average demographic of a sports bettor in the US is a male between the ages of 24 and 35. This demographic accounts for nearly 80% of all bettors across various platforms. Now, I'd like to clarify that the next part I'm going to say is not factual, it's just an opinion. As a male in his mid-20s, I can say that I do not personally gamble in any sort of way. But I can say for certain that a lot of people my age do. Many of my friends are sports bettors, and their income ranges vary greatly. Some are college students, some are classified as low income, some are weirdly wealthy for our age group. I asked a few of them why they gamble and if they regularly gamble in forms other than sports betting, and all of them pretty much said the same thing. The only form of gambling they regularly partake in is sports betting. Why is that? Basically because they feel like they know the game, so they can quote-unquote predict the bets better. Sports betting walks a weird line in the world of gambling. While it's not statistically random as a game of roulette, so to say, there is still a heavy component of chance that is implicitly associated with it that is not often considered to be present as it really is. Obviously, sports are very statistical. There are averages for just about every stat. There are teams that are just better than other teams, and these types of statistical consistencies create a sense of confidence when it comes to betting. Or in other words, it makes people think they quote-unquote know the game. But ultimately, sports betting is still gambling, and there's a reason why they don't call it sports gambling, to try and get that confidence out of people. A team gets upset, a star player has an off day, an athlete gets injured, and none of that can be accounted for when it comes to the confident-inducing statistics that surround sports betting. And when these things happen, it can cause real problems. According to a survey by US News, 1 in 4 sports bettors say they have missed bills because of betting. Nearly 50% say they can't pay off credit card bills due to sports betting. 1/3 say they have debts attributed to gambling. 15% say they've taken out payday loans of high interest to fund their bets. And most shockingly, 1 in 4 gamblers actively worry that they cannot control their gambling habit. The financial losses of the betting industry are shouldered by the player, no shock there, but the scale and severity of these consequences are rarely addressed by the betting platforms for good reason. It would hurt business if people knew the toll that sports betting had. Hello, this video is sponsored by me, Mystic Ratman. I'm selling new stickers that are slightly bigger than the old ones, and guess what? It's gonna be the same price. So if you support me and want to help fund a camera and get me gear for a new microphone that I eventually will buy, consider buying a sticker or something. My Etsy's in the description below. Anyways, back to the video. But betting on stuff via your cell phone has branched off into more than just sports. At this point, anyone can bet on anything. And I really mean anything. In December 2025, Luana Lopez Lara became the youngest self-made female billionaire in history at the age of 29. Quite the impressive feat, of course, but how did she do it? Through betting. No, not by winning bets, but rather making a platform that allowed people to bet on literally anything. In 2018, Lara and business partner Tarek Mansour co-founded a platform called Kalshi that would eventually launch in 2021. So what is Kalshi? Well, legally, it's a financial exchange that sells derivative contracts. But what is it in practice? It's an online betting platform that allows the user to bet on anything. What Kalshi sells is a event contract. So let's say I wanted to bet on whether or not Jesus Christ returns to Earth in January of 2026. The contract price is 99 cents for a no and 1 cent for a yes. Kalshi pays $1 whole to whichever outcome happens per contract. So if I spent that penny on a yes contract and Jesus did come back in January, well, I'd make 99 cents. Get it? Also, I use that example because I got an ad on Instagram with this exact scenario, which is fucking nuts to me. Anyways, this example highlights the scale of which you can bet on this platform. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as who will win the election kind of thing, and sometimes it's as ridiculous as, will space aliens destroy New Zealand tomorrow? Regardless of the bet, Kalshi takes a small fee from the winner and all of the money is bet peer-to-peer, so technically you can't bet against the house, like you could in a casino since everything legally is a trade between users. A huge difference between Kalshi's "we are totally not a betting platform" and sports betting apps is that Kalshi is legal everywhere. Remember that sports betting is only legal in 39 states, and the apps are only legal in 32. Kalshi is not regulated state to state because it's technically not gambling as explained prior. So states can't really decide if it can operate within their boundaries because Kalshi is regulated by the federal government as a commodities exchange, much like E-Trade or Robinhood. And don't worry, if the regular sports betting apps aren't in your state, you can still sports bet on Kalshi. Now, when it comes to Kalshi in its unique form of totally not gambling, we will see how long the legality of this will last. A few states have already sued Kalshi, specifically around the sports-related bets, saying it's just sports betting in disguise. But the leaders in the lawsuits are, can you guess? Nevada and New Jersey, two states with very powerful casinos and betting lobbies, which insinuates that they don't want Kalshi gone, they just want in on the action. And actually, other platforms are getting in on the action. Aforementioned Robinhood, the most popular retail stock and crypto exchange app, has already implemented their own form of Kalshi's model into its platform. They just call it the predictions market. So even if you have no interest in gambling, it's there, wink wink. Now, there is another form of gambling that is gaining popularity here in the US as well. And this time, it's just straight up gambling. It's not even bets. I'm talking about crypto casinos. Has your favorite streamer or internet personality ever passively mentioned stake or rain bet? Well, those are the big ones. Online casinos are something that have been heavily regulated in the US for a very long time. You may find the occasional online poker website with ways to make money, but that's kind of the extent of the legality in the US. Well, then how is stake legal? Honestly, the way that stake games the system is so stupid, I can't even believe it's legal. Stake is not legally pay to play, which would classify it as a casino if it was. They have two different in-site currencies. The main currency is called gold coins. These have no real monetary value and can't be exchanged for anything. They are just used for the games. But when you buy one of these coins, Stake also awards you with something called Stake Cash as a gift, which can also be exchanged for cryptocurrencies. Stake Cash can also be rewarded as a daily login bonus or a sweepstake, but can't be technically purchased directly, therefore it's not pay to play, therefore it's not a casino. On the flip side of Stake, there's RainBet, which is just a full-on casino, which is very illegal. So how do people use it if it's not allowed in the United States? Simple, VPN, that's it. RainBet is also a crypto casino, but it's pay to play, so it's not legal in the US at all. And since VPNs in crypto exist, people can still play if they really need to. Now, do I personally know or have even met anyone who uses these forms of gambling? No. Honestly, these are pretty extreme, but what's weird about me is the amount of advertising I see for these in the weirdest places. Just like I go on the internet and I just see the Stake logo over MMA clips, or this guy bringing homeless people into an aluminum foil wrapped van and making them play RainBet on a giant iPad, which admittedly is very funny. Or fitness influencers casually betting on it out of the blue. Chansborough, if you like him. It's just sort of always there when I go on social media, and I tried to figure out why that is, because obviously they're paying people. I couldn't find much detail or anything to confirm this, but these people obviously aren't doing this for free. I found a Reddit post where this guy claimed to have been paid $3,000 flat by RainBet to promote them, and I'm guessing that even if he is lying, that format doesn't seem to be far off, and I wouldn't have any idea who those casinos were if it wasn't for them being seemingly omnipresent on social media accounts. Now we have to ask a critical question here about betting. Obviously, casinos in the gambling industry are very profitable. I mean, Nevada exists to gamble, basically. The money is always there, but Why has gambling become so shockingly popular? I mean, most people know the dangers of gambling pretty well and understand the consequences it can have on your life. And we can identify an answer through a few different means. The first is, of course, accessibility. The ability to bet has always been there, but if you wanted to go and do it, you had to go to a physical location to gamble. And that's important for two reasons. For one thing, you had to be in some sort of proximity or be willing to commit the time to go to a casino or sports betting hall. It wasn't a convenient thing to go, and some people just straight up couldn't. But the other reason was actually being in that environment. Sure, the lights and glamour of Vegas are a fun spectacle, and they do a good job at nullifying the degeneracy of massive gambling halls. But even with all that makeup, you can still feel that it's wrong to be doing what you're doing in Vegas. Hence Sin City. And not every casino is in Las Vegas or like Las Vegas. Not by a long shot. I've been to a few of those Indian casinos across the western United States, those casinos in the middle of nowhere, and when I'm in there, the environment is outright depressing. It's old people gambling away all their money with oxygen tanks while they smoke cigarettes still. It's not something I would frequent just based off of that, and I think a lot of people feel the same about any casino. It's generally grimy and a hostile environment. Removing that environmental layer and giving people the ability to gamble while taking a shit at work will obviously create a much larger clientele pool that's just getting their foot in the door. The second big reason for why gambling is becoming super popular is, of course, it's a scientific reason. Gambling is addictive. No shit. Profound, right? Let's just do the science lesson for the sake of understanding. Gambling is addictive because it hijacks the brain's reward system, especially dopamine, a pleasure chemical that in this case spikes at anticipation of uncertain outcomes. The illusion of control makes the brain interpret losses as a form of progress, which further keeps the gambler engaged. Losses also create a cycle where the player gets very stressed, feels the need to recoup their losses or double down, and repeated exposure to the cycle eventually weakens impulse control and creates a dependency for dopamine that our modern gambling platforms amplify with fast cycles, live betting, constant promotions, and creating a loop that reinforces gambling behavior and makes it extremely hard for some people to stop. Okay, science talk over. This wildly addictive feedback loop being accessible 24/7 to anyone with a cell phone and an internet connection, you can see why that's a problem. But the third reason for this gambling epidemic isn't as concrete, unfortunately. I would again like to pause here and separate this segment from whereas much of what I've said before has been factual, my view on the final reason is a lot more speculative. The third reason for this epidemic, as pointed out by one of my elder brothers, is that it's a symptom of our modern U.S. culture. Over the past decade or so, general culture in the United States has become very open to degeneracy across many different forms. Glorified substance abuse, OnlyFans, gambling have all become something that is common to see. Now, these respective forms of what is commonly associated with degeneracy have always been present not only in our own society, but pretty much every human society in history. What's different now is that they seem to be actively rewarded and glorified. Celebrities and influencers abusing substances in public, creating trends that others follow. OnlyFans creators flaunting the money they make from the platform. Influencers hitting a big parlay and showing it to their followers. All of these activities had an element of social shame that has been outright removed. There isn't as much embarrassment that comes along with having a gambling addiction now. And that social embarrassment functioned as a sort of gatekeeper that prevented many from starting in the first place. But there's another reason, as I see it. The sudden rise of gambling is also a reflection of financial hopelessness. Think back to the primary demographic of bettors. Just think about that age for a second. 24 to 35. Young people are betting more than anyone else. Why is that? As I alluded to before, it reflects a degree of hopelessness for many young Americans today. We are surrounded by a very, very money-centric culture. Everywhere you look, there's a get-rich-quick scheme. People selling courses on how to sell a course on how to be your own boss. The dollar is very weak. Home prices are unattainable for most, and the job market is absolutely awful. It's tough out there, and a lot of people are looking for that way to make extra money, but they don't have the know-how or even the time. That's where betting comes in. To many, betting presents itself as a legitimate side hustle. They know a guy who hit a big bet and hear the stories of the massive payouts, and they think to themselves, well, I know, Paul, I can win some money easy. And then they do it while relaxing and watching sports with their friends. What an easy win, right? You get to bet on shit, make money, and watch sports with the bros. Well, betting to many represents also a feeling of hope. They can win big, they can double their money, they can get rich quick, or they can just make a few bucks on the side to help pay for the beers. But then the cycle begins. Losses add up, and then they hit big. And now they're back to zero. No winnings, no losses. But the memory of that big win will hold out. It holds hope for them. But that hope has tricked them and brought them into the clutches of the new epidemic that's sweeping America: gambling. I hope you enjoyed today's video. What do you think about betting? I think you can guess what I think about betting. Well, thanks for watching. If you're still here, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any feedback for me, let me know. Send me an email, buy a sticker. I'd be happy to hear from any of you. Well, goodbye.